was a man of science, a believer in the tangible, the measurable. Ghost stories, supernatural tales, they were nothing more than the ramblings of overactive imaginations. That's what I told myself when I was assigned the night shift on the hospital's most notorious floor, Ward 13. The Silent Ward, they called it. A place where the air felt heavier, the shadows darker, and the whispers louder. Staff spoke in hushed tones about flickering lights, phantom footsteps, and patients who claimed to hear voices in the dead of night. But I dismissed it all. I was Dr. Ethan Graves, a man who dealt in facts, not fear. At 9 p.m., I began my rounds with Nurse Clara, a young woman barely out of nursing school. She was 22, with wide, nervous eyes that darted down the dimly lit corridors. Ward 13 housed only 3 patients that night, 2 elderly women and a teenage boy in a coma after a horrific car crash. By 11 p.m., the first sign of unease crept in. The lights flickered, plunging the hallway into darkness for a split second before the emergency generator hummed to life. Clara's breath hitched, and she clutched her clipboard like a shield. "It's just an old building," I said, though the words felt hollow even to me. Midnight came and went. I was on the 2nd floor, tending to a patient, when Clara's scream shattered the silence. It wasn't a scream of surprise. It was raw, primal terror. I dropped my stethoscope and sprinted toward the sound. Clara stood frozen outside room 13A, her face ashen, her body trembling violently. "What happened?" I demanded, gripping her shoulders. There's someone in there," she stammered, her voice barely above a whisper. Room 13. A had been sealed for months, ever since a patient died under mysterious circumstances. The door was supposed to be locked, the room untouched. I pushed past her, determined to prove it was nothing more than her imagination. The door creaked open, revealing an empty room. The bed was stripped, the machines silent, the air thick with dust. "See, there's no one here," I said, though a cold knot of dread tightened in my chest. Then we heard it, a faint, rhythmic tapping. It came from the window. I stepped closer, my heart pounding in my ears. Outside the glass, smeared handprints glistened in the moonlight, even though we were 3 stories up. Before I could speak, Clara gasped, "Look!" I turned. The bed, which had been empty moments ago, now held a figure. An elderly woman lay there, her skeletal frame draped in a tattered hospital gown. Her hair hung in greasy strands, obscuring her face. "Who are you? How did you get in here?" I demanded, my voice steady despite the icy fear clawing at my throat. The woman's head tilted slowly, her neck cracking like dry twigs. Her eyes, hollow, sunken, and impossibly black, locked onto mine. Her lips parted, and her voice, a guttural rasp, filled the room. "He's coming for you." I grabbed Clara's arm and dragged her out of the room. As we stumbled into the hallway, the sound of rolling wheels stopped us cold. A gurney moved down the corridor on its own, its wheels squealing like a dying animal. We followed it, our footsteps echoing in the oppressive silence. It stopped outside the ICU, where the comatose boy lay. His heart monitor spiked erratically, the beeps growing faster, louder. Then the power died. The room plunged into darkness, the only light coming from the boy's monitor. His eyes snapped open, wide and unseeing, and he sat up with a violent jerk. His head turned toward me, and his lips parted. "Run," he whispered, his voice a guttural croak. He collapsed back onto the bed, the monitor flatlining. The lights flickered back on, but the terror didn't end. A guttural, inhuman scream echoed through the ward, shaking the walls and rattling my bones. Clara and I bolted, our footsteps pounding down the stairs as the scream followed us, growing louder, closer. When we reached the lobby, I finally stopped, gasping for air. Clara clung to me, her nails digging into my arm. "The woman," she said, "he's coming for you," she whispered, her voice trembling. A cold shiver crawled down my spine. "What woman?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. Clara's eyes widened, her gaze fixed on something behind me. I turned slowly, my breath catching in my throat. In the corner of the dimly lit lobby, a shadow shifted. It was tall, impossibly tall, its form twisting and writhing like smoke. And then it stepped forward, revealing a face, a grotesque, grinning mask of death. "He's here," Clara whispered, her voice breaking. And as the shadow lunged, I realized too late that some horrors defy explanation. Some horrors are real. Like and subscribe, and I'll see you in your nightmares.